Hello everybody and welcome back into Cult Film Cafe with me, one of your hosts, Jonathan, and I'm joined as always by my partner in crime, Kenzie McLean.
Hello there.
So unfortunately we don't have a guest on this week's episode of the podcast, but like the last time we just decided to record one ourselves so that there's one out there for all of you lovely people to listen to. Now this is a bit of a weird one because normally the guest picks the film. But this was a weird. This one wasn't Kenzie's choice or my choice. We actually asked a friend of Kenzie's just to randomly pick a film off the list, and they chose Terry Gilliam's 12 Monkeys.
He did.
You're a very good observer, Cole.
We have a very advanced program, something very different.
An opportunity to reduce your sentence considerably.
And possibly play an important role in returning the human race to the surface of the Earth.
No license, no prints, no warrants.
But he took on 5 cops like he was dusted to the eyeballs.
What year is this?
What year do you think it is?
1996.
That's the future, James. Do you think you're living in the future?
I am simply trying to gather information to help the people in the present trace the path of the virus.
We're not in the present now.
This is a place for crazy people.
I'm not saying you're not mentally ill. For all I know, you're crazy as a loon.
The army of the 12 monkeys, they're the ones that spread the virus.
Monkeys.
He's been living in a meticulously constructed fantasy world, and that world is starting to disintegrate.
You haven't become addicted to that dying world?
No, sir.
He needs help.
I think I'm crazy when people start dying next month. I don't belong here.
You're here because of the system.
I know some things that you don't know.
Yes, my son.
He sent me to the wrong year.
You're certain of that?
Science ain't an exact science.
You had a bullet from World War I in your leg, James. How did it get there?
I don't know.
You're a trained psychiatrist. You know the difference between what's real and what's not.
You said that I had delusions. You said you could explain.
I'm trying to.
I want the future to be unknown.
I can help you. Get you out.
You can't hide from them. Don't even try.
We're all monkeys.
The thing mutates. We live underground.
They're watching you.
I just want to do my part to get us back on top, in charge of the planet.
So Kenzie, like all of these movies, has never watched it before.
Yeah.
So yeah, it'll be interesting to hear your initial thoughts on the film.
Yeah. I really like it. I like it. I didn't know much about the film. Like, I knew the name. That is like all I really knew about. I knew it was some sort of kind of time travel-y film, but that's all I knew. And so yeah, it was pretty much like completely. It's one of those films where I actually don't really know anything about. Bar that Brad Pitt and Bruce Willis is in it. So yeah, it was kind of like a completely new, fresh new watch to me. Didn't know anything really about it. Didn't know where it was going or anything. I really enjoyed it. I really liked the style of it, to be honest. It's very odd. It was a lot different from what I expected it to be. I really like the main theme of the film. It stands out, I think. The overall plot, I just overall enjoyed the film. I think most things about it. It really keeps you like entertained and not sure where the film's actually going to go. How's it? What's going to happen in the end? And you get little pieces like fed to you through the film, and it makes you kind of piece things together. But even still, by the end of the film, I still wasn't too sure until the very end what was actually going to happen. So yeah, I enjoyed it.
I think that's time travel movies can be a bit hard to follow. This one's no different. It sometimes is quite of a weird film to try and follow what's going on, I feel sometimes. But that's what makes the film, I suppose, so weird is the way that it does jump around like that. I think it's one of those things where time travel films have always been the forefront of people. They've always went, I want time travel, try and do time travel. And for the most part, and this is like a sweeping statement, but most time travel movies get the time travel wrong.
Yeah.
Or they get the time travel overcomplicated, and it kind of ends up say that again. It kind of ends up ruining one of the main parts of a narrative. If you're kind of doing a narrative around time travel, at least try and make it understandable.
Yeah.
I think that's what like Back to the Future gets right, is uncomplicated time travel.
Yeah.
It's basically about a car that has a flux capacitor that needs to hit a certain speed to go back in time or go forward in time. And it's very simple to understand.
Yeah. I think with time travel, I think a lot of films that do time travel get wrong is they try and go too complicated with it. And they're like, because I think some films just kind of take time travel and do it kind of like the kind of basic kind of thing of it, where what everyone knows, like they don't really get into too many like things like paradoxes and stuff like that. But then some films think they want to go really deep into some parts of time travel, and it gets super complicated. You end up with tons of plot holes. It just doesn't really make any sense. I think one of the worst for this is Doctor Who, the TV show. It's so bad about its time travel at some points, and I think it's because they keep on changing how the time travel works. That's what happens when you have complicated time travel, is it gets really messy, and then you end up with plot holes at different parts. You're like, hold on, wait, time travel worked like that before, but now it works like this. That makes no sense. This film doesn't do that. It seems to work the same way throughout the film, and that's just that, which I enjoyed.
Yeah, I mean, I really enjoy this film. I mean, I've watched it before. I'm familiar with it. I really like Terry Gilliam.
I didn't know it was him.
Yeah, it's what he's. If you've not, you probably haven't watched a lot of his films. I mean, you probably know him more for being a Monty Python member, really.
I'm trying to remember. I think I have seen some of them. I'm going to quickly check. I know that he does make films and stuff like that.
Yeah. We have another film of his coming up on the podcast at some point that hopefully somebody else picks, because I love talking. He's just got a very distinct style. I think what happened with 12 Monkeys, though, is he managed to fuse his style in terms of the futuristic part. So 2035, when they're in the future, is very steampunk, very futuristic. Terry Gilliam kind of fisheye lens, kind of. It's very Terry Gilliam in style, but when they jump back to the past, so the 90s, it's very 90s. He's not tried to make it. What I'm trying to say is he's merged like both worlds together really well, and you get a bit of him, and then you get a bit of sensible world building as well, which obviously really makes it good as well, because you wouldn't really want a sort of futuristic 1990 just because you could. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think the style. I mean, I love the style. I didn't like. I've seen so many films do like futuristic, but I've never seen like the kind of future scene portrayed this way. It's very odd, very interesting. It's really like, I don't even know what like it's like very like kind of like, I mean, you're right, it's steampunk really, but it's just, even for steampunk, I think it looks super interesting and weird. Like the way like these like the suits they have on and stuff like that, where it's like they're like kind of hazmat suits and that are all just like fucking big plasticky kind of bags almost, like I don't even know how to describe it, like big. Yeah, and then like the outside world is all kind of like post-apocalyptic. You know, I mean, you don't get to see a lot of the futuristic world.
No,
but from what you do get to see it looks pretty crazy. I'd like to see more, to be honest, from like that kind of thing. But you don't really see like, I think there's like only one point when like Bruce Willis's character goes out into the things, and it's right at the start.
Yeah.
It made me think of the game Metro, which was based off a book, but it's not the same thing at all. It's just that it looks kind of similar. But you kind of see these weird things, like you see animals, there's tons of animals about, and he's having to collect them and stuff like that. But yeah.
Well, it's one of those films that, based on what happened in the world that we live in the last few years, it's very poignant.
Yes,
You've got to
absolutely.
think of a film that was made 26 years ago, had the same message, which pretty much shut this world down for 2 years. It's quite ironic in a way.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing to watch.
The only thing that was different is we weren't forced underground. We just were forced to stay indoors. But it's still kinda, so it's very, very similar. Airborne virus is going to wipe out the world, essentially 5 billion people, which that obviously did happen in the film, whereas obviously didn't happen for us, and things kind of subsided. But it was due to vaccine development, which is the reason that they're sending people back. That's one of the good things I like about this time travel film, is they're very aware that you can't change the past. That's one of the messages, is the past. What they can do is they can find out answers to help the future, and that's what's in this film. Is like he's not going back to essentially try and change the past. He's what they're trying to do is to go back and help them get out of the way they're living in their present, which I find quite cool. But yeah, it's very poignant. I remember watching this film in like 2020, I think, and it was just one of those where you go, yep. Sometimes old films get it right. I just want to say that this film is hugely based, that is largely based on a French short film called La Jetee by Chris Marker. But I've not watched that film. I know that it's lauded as sort of what a great piece of cinema. But the unusual thing about that is it's all still image, I think, is what I was reading. It's not moving image.
Oh,
but
right.
it's the way that they create a score and the editing styles that they create the atmosphere. But yeah, that's where this film got all of its main sort of story arcs from. And then there's a lot of things in this film that give a nod to old cinema. Things like some Alfred Hitchcock. When they're in the cinema, they're watching Hitchcock.
So the Birds that was on. And stuff like
the
that.
Birds, some Vertigo. So there's nods to Vertigo. You know, when they change into disguises, that's kind of that's in Vertigo. So there's a lot of nods. That's why the film's pretty cool for me. Like it's it just has so many good things in it. Like I was saying about Terry Gilliam, I'm a fan of Terry Gilliam. I know there's a lot of people that are as well, but he is one of those directors which people, maybe the casual film viewer, would find it quite hard to get into his style of filmmaking, because it is very out there.
It's very different.
Yeah, it's we done Blade Runner last on the podcast, and funnily enough, it's what this film and Blade Runner kind of get brought up in the same conversation quite a bit. I would say that there's a big reason for that. Is the screenplay writer for Blade Runner is also the screenplay writer for this film.
That's interesting.
David Peoples. So it was Hampton Fancher and David Peoples that co-wrote the screenplay for Blade Runner, and it was David Peoples and Janet Peoples who wrote the screenplay for this. And obviously, the one of the things that they're both based on other pieces of work as well. Like Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, the Philip K. Dick novel for Blade Runner, and La Jetee for this. So there's already existing work that they're trying to use to write. I'm not saying you shouldn't adapt stuff. I think you should if it's available to be adapted. But yeah, I really like this film. I've always been a big fan of this film. I don't know, it's just one of those that's kind of stuck with me.
It's very unique.
Yeah, there's not really it's not really a lot there's not really things that I dislike about it either. Like I said, it's like time travel films can get a bit bitty. That might be the wrong word. A bit kind of, I don't know what the word is. A bit, I don't know. I'm struggling to find a word for that, but you know what I mean with time travel films. There's only few time travel films that I actually like.
Yeah.
Bruce Willis has actually been in 2 of them, which is quite
Looper.
funny. Yeah.
But even Looper, I feel like Looper's really hard to follow for some people, where I think this is a much easier follow through than Looper. I've never actually seen Looper, but I know some people really like it, and I know some people don't like it at all. Whereas I think this one's, I need to fully watch it, because I've not actually fully seen it. But yeah, this film was it was really good. I enjoyed it. The acting as well. Like Bruce Willis, Bruce Willis is known for being a decent actor, and then just falling off the edge of like, all right, he just does okay performances for now on. He does a great performance in this film.
Yeah, like I was reading that this was the part of his career he was trying to branch out to different genre. He didn't really want to be just an action star, which he kind of was pigeonholed as for a long time, because of Die Hard. But yeah, Willis's performance is really good. I like Madeleine Stowe; she's really good. But for me, Brad Pitt is the movie
fantastic
in terms of performance.
He wasn't in it enough, though. I think he should have been in it more.
I think that's just he was the supporting actor. That's why he got nominated and won the Golden Globe for his performance. He got nominated for the Academy Award for this performance. I think the thing with Brad Pitt is, I think Terry Gilliam wasn't sold on Brad Pitt being able to do that crazy kind of stuff.
Took away his cigarettes.
That's pretty much what I was going to say. That's how he got in. And what a performance! It's great. Like, and another thing is there's quite a lot of similarities between Fight Club and this film as well.
In certain ways.
Well, if you think about his characters, talks about consumerism or like stuff in the mental side. There's some crossover, not massive, but there is a wee bit. There's other things that pop up. That will pop up later on in the podcast. But yeah, acting was really good. I think, like, I would normally bring up music for a lot of the podcast. This one, for me, I don't really think it's all that stand out. But
it's main theme, really.
But it just fits the film, I suppose, which is a good thing. The main theme, like, apart from that,
nothing else to do it bar that.
Just, yeah.
I mean, it's got some kind of, actually, like, it plays What a Wonderful World, some kind of songs like that. To be honest, I feel like a lot of the songs that it played are songs that are played a lot in films. What a Wonderful World is a song it's one of the songs that's been played the most in films, I'm pretty sure. And it plays it in this film twice, I think, at the credits and at one point in the film. There's a few other songs.
The whole, on Blueberry Hill.
Oh,
when
yeah.
He's listening to it, and then when he's coming round, they're singing it, and it's a bit weird. I don't know if they use the music for they were trying to do something, because I know that there is films that use music in that way to try and evoke something, or to that seems very Inception to me. Like, they use the music and another sort of weird, not quite time travel. I don't know what would call Inception. It's not time travel, but it's, what would you call it?
How do you describe Inception?
You would call Inception like a mind fuck, probably.
Very much.
It's travel through subconscious, which is another thing on its own.
Technically, they are slowing down time in a way.
I know, subconscious travel. Yeah, they are. It's another. I think it's what Inception's one of those films that won't be called a time travel movie, but it probably has a lot of tropes of a time travel movie in it because it does. But yeah, I just wanted to bring up. Normally, in this section, I bring up some fun casting what ifs. Initially, Terry Gilliam wanted to cast Nick Nolte as James Colt and Jeff Bridges as Jeffrey Goins, but the studio objected. So yeah,
I don't know about Jeff Bridges. Huh. That'd be interesting. You see, that's kind of weird. Jeff Bridges seems to, like, in a lot of these films that we've talked about, Jeff Bridges always seems to be an option. That's quite a few times his names came up as a what if.
Well, Jeff Bridges has worked with Terry Gilliam on his film before this, The Fisher King.
My dad loves that film.
So I think that's what a lot of directors try and do, is work with people that they're familiar with. It's look at like Leo and Scorsese. I mean, I think like every film Scorsese's done since the early 2000s, Leonardo DiCaprio's been in it.
Yeah, there's most of them at this point.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think it's just. I mean, I think Madeleine Stowe was a shoe-in for Gilliam because I think it says here that he was impressed by her performance in a film called Blink, which came out in 1994. Yeah, I think she plays her part very well. Brad Pitt was the real wild card because we'll go on to talk about money and more in depth, but he got paid not a lot of money for this film. Don't know exactly how much.
1995 was it?
Yeah, but by the time that this came out in December 1995, I think they obviously either filmed it in early. Well, there must have been sort of 94, I would say. But by the time this was released, Interview with a Vampire, Legends of the Fallen Seven had all been released. And Brad Pitt had already sort of became an A-list actor, but because obviously he was filming this before that, that's what they were saying. Like, I think it's one of those sort of reasons why the film was so successful, but we'll touch onto that when we go further into the podcast. I like we spoke about the films, the way it looks, aesthetics, design, production, cast. There's a lot of great stuff. This is one of the films I don't really have a lot of negative at all about. I bring this up in every podcast though. Special effects and visual effects have moved on a long way in a short time. And that's my only gripe with this. You can kind of see the green screen parts.
Oh, right.
I
never really noticed, to be honest.
Do you know that way where it's kind of, you can tell somebody's standing in front of a screen?
Yeah.
Which, once you see it, you can't not see it, which is annoying.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of all from me. Like, I like a lot of things in this film. There's some pernickety things, you know. Like I said about the visual effects and special effects and stuff. They're kind of me just being pernickety. You've got to remember how old the film is and stuff like that. But I do feel as though there's some older films or some films of the same age which do look better now. That still looks good. It still looks like a good film. I'm not saying it doesn't. I just think there's films that look better or have maybe aged better, so to speak. But apart from that...
There's films that also look worse.
Oh, that's 100% true, yeah.
Thick in the middle.
Yeah, kind of. So from that, we'll just go on and give our ratings of the film then.
Do you want me to go first?
I'll go first if you want.
Right, cool. Go ahead.
Like I said, based on what I've already said, I've always been a big fan of this film. I mean, ever since I watched it the first time. Big fan of the style. It's sci-fi genre for me, in case you haven't already found out, is a big genre that I like. Well, I like good sci-fi. I'm just going to say that. Sorry, Star Wars fans. Let's start a beef. But yeah, like on the last episode, Blade Runner, right up my street. 12 Monkeys, right up my street. I prefer Blade Runner. I always will prefer Blade Runner, but this is really close. There's a lot of kind of similarities, and I mean, I also feel as though we said it in the last episode that without Blade Runner, films like this don't get made.
Yes.
You don't get this. This just doesn't become a thing. I'm not saying sci-fi wouldn't get made. I just think you would maybe get a bit more sort of cheesy sci-fi stuff rather than this kind of sci-fi film noir. There is a lot of sort of noir elements to this as well that are in Blade Runner. So for me, it's a solid 4 out of 5. Really strong rating. Not quite the 4.5 that I gave Blade Runner, but definitely a really great film and massively worth the watch. And it's free to watch. I don't know how it's been on iPlayer for ages, by the way.
That's really weird. I don't know why that is.
I don't know why that is. I don't know if they've just if BBC own it. I'm not. That's a lie.
Maybe they do.
Maybe they've just got maybe they've just got a longer deal with the film. But anyway, it's on BBC iPlayer. It's free to watch. Give it a watch. Great film. And if you're into sci-fi, definitely give it a watch because you'll love it.
Right. Well, I do like sci-fi. I'm not like, oh, actually, it depends. I mean, I do like sci-fi. Sometimes I can really like sci-fi. Sometimes I'm not bothered about certain ones. This one I particularly liked. Jonathan mentioned that the last film we done was Blade Runner. He really liked Blade Runner. I didn't really. He prefers Blade Runner, but he still likes this. I prefer 12 Monkeys. I didn't really like Blade Runner that much, but the one thing I did prefer about Blade Runner was the kind of world that it was set in. I think it was much more interesting and looked visually very appealing, and I kind of can't wait to see the sequel, to see the kind of new, like, how like films have changed and to see it like done better in a way. But anyway, let's not talk about Blade Runner. I would give this film, I'm going to give it a solid 3.5. I don't think it hits the 4, for me anyway, although I did really like the film. I don't think it's a 4 for me, but I think it's definitely, I can hit a 3.5. It's very solid. I don't have many complaints about the film. Not really any, to be honest. It was just very solid. It's like, from start to finish, it just does what it does, and it does it really well. I don't think it fails on anything. It knew what it was setting out to do, and it just done it. I think I've said that before, but it really did. It keeps you captivated all the way through. Not a single part of this film is boring. I mean, for our first watch, it's like you're just sitting there, like, kind of wondering, what is going to happen? Wait, what is happening? It even makes you question: is all the stuff that Bruce Willis is like seeing, and that is it even real? Maybe he is just insane. It's very enjoyable, and then you get to the end, you're like, and it all comes together, which is great. I love when these films actually, by the end of the film, you're like, all right, now I understand everything, and you don't understand everything until like the very last part of the film, which is great. It's like the last 10 minutes, so it keeps you It's not like you get to a certain point and it's like, all right, now I know what happens. It's like you get to the end of the film and you're like, now I know what happens. So yeah, I think it's a 3.5. Go, watch it. It definitely needs to be watched. I think it's one of the ones you should not miss.
Well, there you have it. Not quite a 4, but a strong 3.5, a strong 4 from me. So yeah, like Kenzie said, go out and watch it. You've got nothing really to lose, specifically if you're into weird. If you're into any form of weird film, watch it. Sci-fi specifically, go and watch it. So that is us for the reviews. We are now going to move swiftly on to the rules section of the podcast, where we break down the film using 6 metrics, talking points, which we believe cult films should sort of hit to have cult status. They are low budget / box office flop, rewatchability, quotability, not well received by contemporary critics / reviewers, explores controversial topics, subjects and themes, and the cultural impact and legacy of the film. Now, we'll just go straight into low budget / box office flop for this one. So, Kenzie, what do you have for me?
The budget of this film was $29.5 million, which, for that time, I think that's a kind of middling budget, but or maybe low middling, it depends. But the box office it made was, wow, $168.8 million. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Wow.
Like I said earlier, I think a lot of that, I know this is maybe not 100% true, but a lot of that was the Brad Pitt rise. Because the film went from having like one A-lister to having two A-listers.
Yeah.
Which pulls people in. But yeah, like Kenzie said, the budget and the box office. Budget was relatively good for a sci-fi movie, I would say.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Same budget pretty much that Blade Runner had, but Blade Runner was made 12, 13 years before this. So yeah, I think Terry Gilliam done it right. He aimed for a budget, stuck to the budget, and it sort of worked out well. I think this film would have done okay, but I think what happened with Brad Pitt's other films, like I spoke about earlier, being released before this came out, because this film didn't actually hit cinemas until the 29th of December 1995, so it just snuck in as a 95 release. So yeah, and so we were talking about in today's money, it's a budget of around 55 to 60 million in 2022, and a box office gross of around 320 million, which would still be a really successful film today.
Wait, sorry, what did you say the budget is now?
Between 55 and 60.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
And it would make around 320.
So yeah, that's a fairly decent sized budget. That's I don't know if I'd call it.
It's hard because sci-fi films have moved on now. Like I think most sci-fi films that are made now, like that, are huge budgets. Like we spoke about Blade Runner 2049 last week. That budget was $185 million.
That's just welcome to the present day budgets.
Like June's probably that's a sci-fi film, 150 million.
Yeah, it's what to be expected. I think sci-fi films these days are very, what's the word? I'm not even sure what the word is. But it's like they're doing like these big worlds and stuff like that. So
they're epics. They're becoming epics.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, absolutely.
And then obviously, I'm not a Star Wars fan, but the last three films, their budgets were probably really high as well. So, yeah. I think there probably is sci-fi films out there that get made for, like, the new Jordan Peele film. I can't imagine it having a huge budget.
I don't think it would have, in fact. I'm interested.
And that's you said the trailer for that makes it look like a real kind of sci-fi movie.
Yeah, it's like a sci-fi horror. That's actually what it's been genred as, is a sci-fi horror. Let's see what I can get his budget.
68 million, so pretty much run about what?
Round about the same, yeah. That's interesting.
What 12 Monkeys would have been.
Yeah. That's really interesting. Wait, that can't be right. Did Get Out only have a budget of 4.5 million?
Aye.
Wow, really? That's like completely like off topic, but like that's so interesting. Oh.
Well, it's how these I don't know what you would call them, unique filmmakers get into the movie industry, is they have very small budgeted films to start. You look at Robert Eggers with The Witch, was about a few million. M. Night Shyamalan, his career's went a bit weird, because I think his most famous film's probably The Sixth Sense, which probably had quite a big budget, but he's now sort of went back to smaller budget films. But it's just, the reason I bring both of them up is they both are Universal. They're working with Universal. That's the only reason I know that is because Christopher Nolan fan here, he left Warner Brothers and he was touting himself out to people who wants me, essentially another visionary and sort of unique and individual filmmaker. He's ended up at Universal as well, so they've kind of got. It's weird that Universal have got them. So you've got M. Night, he's got his own sort of things he likes to explore, and then Jordan Peele's a kind of horror, but kind of modern horror, talks about a lot of real world problems, but in his own way. And then you obviously Christopher Nolan's a sort of sci-fi genius, in my opinion anyway. But I know people don't like him, but I love him. He's a great filmmaker. But anyway, back to 12 Monkeys. I think the budget is pretty decent. It's a weird one. I think it made it over what the studio would have thought it would make. But like I said, I think the Brad Pitt effect. Like I said, the film hit cinemas 29th of December 1995, where it opened at 31. It didn't do that well in its first week, and then it climbed to number 1 the next 2 weeks.
That's weird.
So the next 2 weeks it was number 1, and I think in both of those weeks it made like over $10 million both weeks, and then it remained inside the top 10 for another 3 weeks after that. So that's 2 at number 1, another 3 inside the top 10, and then it eventually dropped out the top 30 after a 16-week run in cinemas. So it was in cinemas for like 4 months.
That's insane. I genuinely didn't think this film would do that good. Like, the type of film it was and everything. I just didn't see it. It seems like a film that wouldn't have performed that well, and I'm really shocked to see that it performed fucking really well.
I think that's its like total box office of all time. There probably has been re-releases of them or whatever, like films do it. But the main run would have been where it made most of its money. Yeah, it's I was surprised as well to see how much money it made, but I'm glad that it did. I read somewhere that it was fortuitous that Terry Gilliam finally got a breakthrough at the box office. In terms of this is probably, and probably still is, his highest grossing film of all time in terms of total box office gross. He's just one of those filmmakers that I think filmmakers or people in film really like him, but I think viewers, he's probably quite a hard style to get into if you're not into the worlds that he creates. They're all very similar. We'll touch upon it again because, like I said, there's another film on the list which I love and I can't wait to watch it again. Brazil, another Terry Gilliam film. But yeah, that's kind of another weird and wacky creation. But
I think a lot of his films are. I mean, does he also do Fear and Loathing?
Yes.
Yeah, I've heard that's very wacky.
Well,
I'm interested to watch
Fear
that
and
one.
Loathing was after this. So he done Monty Python and Holy Grail was his first directed film. Then he done Jabberwocky, and then Time Bandits, which obviously people have heard about. Then Brazil. Yeah. Then it was The Adventures of Baron Munchausen, The Fisher King, 12 Monkeys, Fear and Loathing. Then he'd done The Brothers Grimm, a film called Tideland. Then The Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus, which is well known for being Heath Ledger's last role. The Zero Theorem, and then The Man Who Killed Don Quixote. But yeah, he's had some decent accolades as well. Films that he's made have been nominated for various awards as well. So like that's why I'm saying I think critically people like him. It's just maybe audiences maybe aren't as compelled to go and watch one of his films over a big blockbuster, say, you know. Yeah. Like when this film came out in 95, there was probably a big blockbuster coming out, like Independence Day or like something like that was probably making loads of money, which is always a shame. But it seems like these blockbusters never go away. And it doesn't matter how bad they are, people still go and watch them. But yeah, so based on that, it wasn't low budget. I don't think, can't call it low budget, and it was never a box office flop. So yeah, that's an X.
Big no.
That's a big no. So rewatchability, I've got like it's around 2 hours.
Yeah, it's exactly 2 hours, I think.
So the film obviously
That's
doesn't
not
quite
including
hit the
credits.
90-minute mark that we normally talk about, which is obviously much easier. It's a much easier rewatching experience. The kind of shorter the film is for multiple rewatchability. But as I'm a big fan of sci-fi cinema, and I have watched this film between 5 or 10 times. Like, I've rewatched this film numerous times, and I will continue to rewatch it. And I personally think that lovers of the genre will find this easily rewatchable. And I don't think it feels like a 2-hour movie. I think it's this kind of same way with Blade Runner, is they're both about 2 hours and they don't really feel super long.
Yeah, actually, that's true. I really felt that with this one, not as much, but I really felt it with Blade Runner. I feel like Blade Runner was over quite quickly. This one didn't feel like it was 2 hours though, but I don't think it felt kind of short as Blade Runner felt. And yeah, I completely agree with what you said as well. If you're into sci-fi, this is like right up your alley, really. There's nothing else really to say. For me, I would probably rewatch it, but I don't feel like I want to rewatch it for a bit. I don't think I'll give it another rewatch for a while. I don't feel like the need to go and, oh, I need to see this again. Although I did like it. I would probably take a while before the next time I watch it, but for fans, like big fans of the sci-fi, like I said, I'm not like the biggest fan of like sci-fi, although I do like it then and again. For people who are, I can see them being like, yeah, let's watch that again. That's it's out of the sci-fi genre. It's one of the stronger ones. So yeah, and it's very unique. So it's a unique sci-fi one as well. So you want something a little bit different. So I would say that it definitely would be rewatchable.
Yeah, I agree. It's probably something that we can just move on from. Like, it's quite a hard one, unless somebody's got a massive thing to say in this. It's quite an easy one just to talk quickly about and move on to quotability, which then again, there's one thing in this that Bruce Willis characters say that became a synonymous line from another movie that he was in.
What's that?
So in 12 Monkeys, he's got a line of dialogue that says, "And all I see are dead people."
Oh yeah, I noticed that, and I made me think of The Sixth Sense. I was like, well, what's going on here?
Nod.
Crossover. This came out before that, I'm guessing, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, this one's weird. I think the film has decent dialogue. I just don't think anything. I'm trying to think. All I keep on thinking is the army, the 12 Monkeys, but there's not. I'm really trying to think here, and I'm.
Like, it's fair if you don't. The one thing that stands out to me is, see towards the end of the film where they go to the hotel and it's like $35 an hour.
Uh-huh.
And the guy who obviously is sitting behind the desk says, "Honey babe," and James Cole grabs him and goes, "She's not honey babe, she's my doctor, my psychiatrist, understand?"
Yeah, I remember that.
I think it's just one of those where it's fair to say that there isn't as many quotable lines. At the start of the film, when he's getting taken away to the psychiatric place, he says, "This place is for crazy people. I'm not crazy."
Yeah.
Which, I mean, obviously, if that happened and you were on the receiving end of somebody coming, just spawning miraculously, that's a bit mental.
Yeah. I'm surprised they don't like the escapes the psychiatric ward, really gets teleported back. Really, I think, and no one everyone's like, "Oh, he must have escaped for the vent," and it's like, what? no way. It's like, but yeah, like I'm just trying to think. Like I said, I don't like the dialogue in this film's bad or anything. And the film's definitely not bad. It's some films dialogue's made to super like overall the dialogue was good and you follow it fine. It's good dialogue. It's just quotable lines. It's not exactly. That's one thing I think this film doesn't really have for it. But I don't think it needs it. I don't think every film needs to be quotable. In fact, I think most films don't need to be. And yeah, this film's still a great film.
I mean, I think maybe films that aren't necessarily well written have maybe one or two lines that stand out because they're memorable.
Yeah,
and that's maybe a negative. But
yeah, that's true.
So yeah, I can say. I mean, as much as there's a few lines in it that I like and I would pick up on. I'm not necessarily saying that it's instantly quotable. I think this film probably isn't the type of film that will have bits of dialogue like that. There isn't, like, Brad Pitt's character's got a few kind of long-winded bits that are a bit wacky and kooky, but
good dialogue, but they're all too long to quote.
Yeah, it's all just too long. So yeah, fair. I mean, I can agree and say that it's not necessarily quotable. So we'll move on to not well received by contemporary critics / reviewers. Now, at the time of recording, the film holds an 88% fresh rating on the tomato meter on Rotten Tomatoes, based on 74 reviews, and an 88% audience score based on over 250,000 ratings. It's also 8 out of 10 on IMDb, with over 600,000 reviews or ratings, whatever you want to call them. So yeah, it seems to be quite a popular film.
Yes.
I've got a couple of people that review wise that I've pulled up. Kim Newman of Empire gave the film 5 out of 5.
Wow.
Saying the film was disorientating, but good performances all round will have you thinking for days afterwards. Roger Ebert gave the film 3 out of 4. He spoke about in his review about how similar like to Blade Runner and stuff like that. He gave Blade Runner 4 out of 4. He gave this 3 out of 4, but obviously like both films. Janet Maslin for the New York Times gave it 4 out of 5. The one big critic who I recognise the name, Richard Corliss of Time Magazine, he gave this a negative review, saying that he felt the film's time travel aspect and apocalyptic depiction of a bleak future were cliches. And in its frantic mix of chaos, carnage, and zoo animals, 12 Monkeys is Jumanji for adults.
Interesting. That's interesting. I disagree with it's Jumanji for adults. I don't understand that, but just because there's animals in it, like what? And there's not even like animals in it for long. Like
no,
I think that's.
I don't know. I think there's just like people that go in with a prefixed disposition to dislike certain genres or types of film.
I guess, yeah. Yeah, like it's. So is that the only like kind of bad one you've seen, really?
Well, it's the biggest one that sort of stood out to me just because I recognised the name.
I'm surprised. I just don't get it. This film was like so like received very well. Like I just didn't think it would be. I'm so shocked. It's so like it seems like a film that was like it seems like one of those films that was like great film that wasn't really received well at the time, didn't make a lot of money, but no, it's like it's different from like the kind of rest of the films that are not like it, but like in the kind of same kind of frame of it, I guess. It made lots of money, was highly praised. Like what? Like what? Like, it's a good thing. It's a good thing. Honestly, it's genuinely a good thing. It's just I'm surprised.
I mean, I think if you just watch the film without reading about anything and people's views on it, fair, you'd maybe would be shocked when you get to this stage of talking about it like this and go, wow, that's probably got a lot. It's probably more popular than you thought it would be, given the way the film looks and stuff like that.
Yeah, and also for the fact that I didn't know about this film for like years. I had never heard a single thing about it. I'd never seen it on TV, never really heard anyone speak about it. And that's even still true now. I don't think I've really heard anyone speak about it. I've only heard mentions of the film then and again. So for me, the film seems like it kind of disappeared in a way. But it seems to be very well liked, so it's really odd, and yeah. It's a weird one.
Yeah, I agree. Like, it seems like a film that maybe shouldn't have done as well or been as well received, but it seems. I think it's just a good mix of right person to helm the project and right cast.
Yeah,
to play the parts, and sometimes that's all your film needs.
That's very true.
So yeah, it's another one that that's a no. Explores controversial topics, subjects, and themes. This is always a tricky one because there's films on the list that still to come that will be much easier for this, and there's films that we've already done which have got very distinct sort of messaging or things that they talk about. I'm not quite sure about this film though.
Controversial. I mean, I guess it's more controversial probably now than it was ever before, due to the subject matter being somewhat close to what we've just experienced in a way.
Mm-hmm.
But bar that, it's not really. It's kind of. It doesn't feel very controversial. It feels like a kind of film that's.
Like, I wouldn't say controversial, but it's definitely a film that
has somewhat touchy subjects at times, but
it's not that. It's just, but as a film that explores very distinct themes, which maybe aren't controversial. And I've always said on the podcast that the controversial, quote unquote, is the difficult word here. Like, I like this film because of the sort of the way that they play with memory and the people's perception of reality.
Yeah.
Because that's a very sliding scope. Because I think there's some people that maybe deal with that on a daily basis. And it can be quite a difficult thing to understand. But like most good films, they frame it in a way where it's much easier to watch. Like, this film essentially breaks a guy down who believes he's doing good because he's from the future, but then gets told most of the time or all the time when he goes back that he's crazy and what you're talking about. And then when Madeleine Stowe's character, the psychiatrist, starts to believe him, that's when he starts to believe that he is actually insane.
Yeah.
It's like a whole flip.
Yeah. It's a really good performance, by the way, from Bruce Willis. That's what I mentioned.
100%, yeah. Like, he's got that... He kind of goes from sort of kind of insane, kind of childlike.
Yeah, he seems very childlike for a lot of parts of the film.
To subpsychotic rage and beats people up.
He seems to be really strong. He does some damage to people.
Yeah. But, yeah. It's a good performance with Bruce Willis. Yeah, I agree. I think it is a really, really good performance. It's probably one of my favourite Bruce Willis films.
Yeah.
Just because it's not... I mean, I think obviously people will say that Die Hard's a better film. Fair, that's a subjective viewpoint. But in terms of actual acting chops, this is far better
far
than
superior,
John
yeah.
McClane. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, good. I think there is. This is a funny one. I'm not saying that anything in this is super controversial, and I'm actually quite. The one thing I like about this is, for the most part, for the last few episodes, we've had to talk about things that would have to be removed because of the way the world's moved through things like Black Lives Matter and Me Too, and things becoming more and more PC. But there's not really anything in this.
Nah.
Which I think is good. So this film could be made exactly the way it is today. You wouldn't have to cut anything out of it. And it would be quite weird, considering, like you said, what we've just lived through. It would be very poignant.
Yeah.
But controversial, no. But this film will make you think. And you probably will think about it if you're a person that thinks about films after they watch them for days, like reviewers have said. This is definitely one of these films that will make you think about what's going on and what's happening, and you know, like even the ending is quite hard to wrap your head around, so people have difference of opinions. So it's really one of those. I think there's a lot of messaging and themes within it, but controversial probably not.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that. It's not really controversial. I mean, it has some subjects in it that are maybe slightly touchy, but it does it all very above board, and yeah, I think it's an easy watch for most people. I wouldn't see many people having sci-fi, and it does it.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll just move on to the cultural impact and legacy of the film. So, like we touched upon it, there's a line of dialogue which has become synonymous with Bruce Willis that featured in this film, but is more recognisable in a film called The Sixth Sense. It's kind of changed a wee bit, but yeah,
it's slightly different. Yeah,
it's slightly different, but eerily similar. It spawned a television show.
I was going to say that, yeah. I remember it coming out.
Which ran for like 4 seasons, I think.
Did it run for 4 series? Holy shit.
I think so.
Yeah, I actually do remember this coming out. In 2016, yeah. Wait, hold on. Sorry, that's not right. No, 2014, sorry. No, wait. No, the second series, when did it start airing? The first series was... including the pilot film in 2013, the series premiered in... No, it premiered in 2015.
2015, January 2015.
But I had a pilot in 2013. Yeah, I remember it coming out. I don't know. The only thing is I don't know if it was any good or not. I just remember it being a thing. Was it Sci-Fi it was on?
Yeah, Sci-Fi.
So take that with a grain of salt, because sometimes Sci-Fi produces a bunch of shite, but then sometimes Sci-Fi produces stuff that's actually genuinely good sometimes. So I don't know if it's any good. Actually, does it say anything about it, actually? Let's just look at a quick rating from the TV show, because I'm interested. The 12 Monkeys TV show.
No.
There it is. It's rated decent. It's 7.7 IMDb, 88% Rotten Tomatoes, and Just Watch, whatever that is, 83%. So that's also rated. In fact, it's rated kind of similar to what the film is. So maybe it is actually worth a watch if you're a fan of the movie. Actually, I might even check that out. I wonder what it's like. I wonder how similar it is or whatnot.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
I don't know. It's... I don't know.
Yeah.
That's
the only really thing, like, legacy-wise, I know about the film. Like, I honestly really feel like this film's been forgotten in a way. Like, it's at the same time, it's not.
Possibly.
But it's like I said, I went for so long without knowing what this film was, and then I'm like, oh yeah, then I hear the film. Oh, it's 12 Monkeys, and it's like, so people know what the film is, But that's about it. It's really weird. And I don't get it because it was received well. People seem to really like it, but it's just not talked about a lot. Bar it getting a TV show in 2015, which was received very well. But again, you don't hear about it. I just looked at the reviews for that show, and it was all fairly high. They were, IMDb was still above average, but like Rotten Tomatoes and the other thing, it was quite high. And it's just, you just don't. Weirdly enough, I feel like this film doesn't have much of a legacy. Some people talk about it, and it's rated pretty highly, but you genuinely just don't hear about the film anymore, and it's really weird. Surprising, and that's why I was.
That's true.
Yeah,
I mean, there is probably some things about it, like the time travel elements in the film are probably things that have tried to be replicated or been fairly. I mean, I think if you were going to make a time travel movie as a movie maker, this would be one of the films that you would watch.
I think that would probably be true.
So I think there is some things about it that, I think also impact, like, did this film, along with some other sort of mid-90s Bruce Willis performances, give him the scope to have acting chops and be in films like this instead of just being typecast?
Yeah, I feel like this probably helped.
Would we have a Bruce Willis like this without 12 Monkeys in this performance? Probably not. And he obviously wanted to work with Terry Gilliam. He took less money and stuff like that. He was probably one of the biggest stars in Hollywood at the time in terms of, box office draw. Big action films and their stars normally draw people in. You just have to look at The Rock these days. Dwayne Johnson, any film he's in makes loads of money. And they didn't even have to be good.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm trying to find any like pop culture references to like 12 Monkeys and other things. But
I think it's it might be difficult. I would say this does have somewhat of a legacy and an impact, maybe not culturally, but specifically within the film industry. Yes.
Huh.
Like, it does talk about the film's obstacles to mainstream success, and even then it made loads of money. That's fair, but it doesn't seem like the type of film that would have made money. We've already touched upon that, but
it was genuinely surprising.
Actually, what it maybe did do was pave the way for, even if a film has difficult, what's the word? Like, difficult concepts or ideas in terms of what they're trying to do in terms of filmmaking, that as long as there's an A-list actor or actors attached to the project, then it's proof that people will go and watch it.
That's true.
Because I think, like, I've already touched upon Inception, but I feel as though without something like a 12 Monkeys existing, where big stars attached to a really weird director who makes original sort of, but not original, like 12 Monkeys is based on like the French short film that we spoke about, but yeah, it's adapted in a weird and sort of individual and unique way that probably was never touted to make loads of money, and it did, and it's maybe made Hollywood more recognise, made Hollywood sort of more open to green lighting sort of original concept filmmaking.
Yeah,
like there has to be something said about that, like it's.
This has been an interesting film to look at, I'm not gonna lie.
It has been. It's a hard one. Like, it's one of these really weird ones because I think it would be a much easier conversation if the film didn't make any money or something like that. But it did, so it's quite a difficult one. But I think this does have a legacy, and people listening to this, go and watch it and create a legacy for it in your own.
It deserves one, really,
because it does deserve one. It might not have a cultural impact in terms of pop culture or stuff like that, but it's a film that certainly had an impact in the movie industry.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm fine to leave it there, and we'll move on to the last part of the podcast, where, based on the discussion we've just had, is it a cult film? And if so, would we place it on our top 100 list? Now, I'll let you go and lead this one off.
Right. Well, I kind of came into this one expecting, after watching it and being like, yeah, this is definitely a cult film, but it's making me question it a little bit. A lot of the rules we went through, which again are just guidelines, but they help out if it is or not. A lot of them were no's. In fact, I think most of them were. So I think it was the first one, the low budget or box office flop. That was a no. Rewatchability was a yes. Quotability was a no. What was number 4 again?
Not well received by contemporary critics.
That was a no because it was received really well.
Yep.
5 was controversial. It wasn't controversial. And then 6, we had to think about it, but overall we would say it is got some sort of legacy. But that's mainly no's. That's only 2 yes. That's their lowest one yet. 2 out of 6.
Probably.
But even saying that, I still think this film must have a following. So I'm gonna cut to say it is a cult film. It must have a following, although it must be fairly small. I wouldn't think it would be, but I mean, the show did eventually span a TV show, so maybe some people were asking. So yeah, I think it is. Clearly, people must still be interested in the film and really enjoy it. For the most part, most people seem to enjoy it at the time, but I still feel like there must be some sort of fan base. But I feel like they might actually not be that big, but they're there. I'm definitely sure of it. I would say this is definitely a cult film.
Fair. This one's been hard for me.
It's been really difficult. Like, this has been probably out of all the episodes, this has probably been the hardest one.
Because we've just done, when you're listening to this, the last episode will have been Blade Runner. Very similar in a lot of ways. And me and Kenzie both said that Blade Runner cannot be a cult film based like today. We did say at the time when it came out it probably was, but over time that because of how it's viewed, that it can't be, in my opinion, anymore. And this is kind of the opposite, because it done same budget, more money, big names, same kind of way, but kind of feels as though it probably is more of a cult film than Blade Runner.
Now more than ever, I really feel like.
Yeah, but it's kind of weird, because Blade Runner people still talk about, and there's probably people that will have it in their top 10 films, top 5 films. There's people that think it's probably the best sci-fi film ever made, like Blade Runner. There might be people that think this is the best sci-fi film ever made, but they're harder to find, I would say, which is probably what makes it more culty. And because it's Terry Gilliam and not Ridley Scott as well, makes it more cult. He's way more of a sort of culty director than Ridley Scott, because people put Ridley Scott in the same category as maybe one of the best directors of all time, up there with like a Scorsese and a Spielberg. I'm not saying they're the same level, but he'd probably be in the conversation. And I think if you ask just a normal movie fan to name 10 film directors, Ridley Scott would probably come out of their mouth.
Yeah.
Just because he's got one of those names that people are familiar with and remember. I don't think Terry Gilliam would come out people's mouths. So this is where it's a bit of I'm stuck here as to whether I think it's a cult film or not. But since it's been lost to the ether and nobody speaks about it, I'll say that it is a cult film. So yeah, and because of that, I will put it in my top 100 because I want a sci-fi movie in there.
Yeah.
And it also kind of hits the time travel stuff. There's like loads of cool things about it. So yeah, it's probably not going to be super high. I'd probably stick it around 50 at the minute, just because I really like the film. This is why it's hard to say that, like 4 out of 5 for me. And if I'm saying it's a cult film, probably has to make my top 100 list. Like, it is really weird how nobody ever speaks about it. Like, nobody's ever came up to me and went, "Have you ever seen 12 Monkeys?"
Exactly.
It's weird. But yeah, I for opposite reasons, like, this is a real switcheroo from Blade Runner. How Blade Runner probably ticked more of the rules, but isn't a cult film. This ticked less, but is. It's really weird. But that's just our opinion, and that's what we have to give. But yeah, I would place it around 50. It could go higher, not lower. What do I mean, lower or higher? I mean towards 100, not towards 1. Or it'll stay around 50 potentially. But yeah, because I've never, like, most of the time you do research, even if you look at a film's Wikipedia page, if they're big films, they'll be like, oh, it'll have loads of like legacy stats of what lists they're on for like best films of all time or best sci-fi films. This doesn't have any of that.
It doesn't have anything.
It's not even was like, oh, it's 1,001 movies to watch before you die, which I think it is, definitely. There's not 1,000 movies better than this that's ever been made, in my opinion. So yeah, that's all I have to say. And massive fan of this film. Go and check it out. Specifically, if you're a fan of Bruce Willis, watch it. If you're a fan of Brad Pitt, watch it. If you're a fan of Terry Gilliam, watch it. If you're a fan of sci-fi, watch it. If you want to watch a good time travel movie, I know they're hard to find, but watch it. And yeah, that's all I have to say. There's loads of good reasons to watch this. Like, you could just be a Bruce Willis fan and go, "I've never seen that." If that's the case, if you are a Bruce Willis fan, watch it, because it does do some incredible acting here. It's a real different character. One of his more unique performances in terms of characterization. But yeah,
it's also probably one of the first. It's probably one of the first times you see him shaved head.
It's very true.
1995. He probably still had hair at that time, so that was probably just him shaving his head. So yeah, that's another interesting thing.
Does he have hair in The Sixth Sense?
Yes.
But he's like proper balding, though, right?
He doesn't. By Sixth Sense, he still has actually, for The Sixth Sense, I think he has an okay, a okay amount. But yeah, he's definitely balding by that point. But it's not probably as bad as you think it would be.
Well, at least they didn't do a Woody Harrelson and wear wigs and shit.
Yeah. I would probably put this film 72.
Your brain works in a fucking weird way, man. Like, you know exactly what number you put.
The thing is, since we've not done enough, I can just I know where we're about to put it, and I'd just rather just give it a number for the moment, because that'll probably once I get other ones. Once it starts getting packed full with the rest of them, they will move about most probably. Some won't. Some
like definitely will move about.
Well, I need to go back and listen to every single podcast to see where I put the numbers and make a little spreadsheet so I know where I put each one, because I need to remember that now, because otherwise, so I need to go back and check.
It's hard because like we've got these films that we're ranking and rating and putting in lists, and it's maybe as hard to keep track. But yeah, well, I think that is us for this episode. It's been a bit of a weird one. It probably sounds a bit like a weird one to use listening, because I'm a big fan of the film, but it's quite perplexing, the film, just in some of the things about it. You would just assume that there would be more buzz about it. But it's just weird how it has just kind of faded away in its own weird and wonderful way. But yeah, as always, if you would like to get in contact with the podcast, you can find us on Instagram at Cult Film Cafe, and you can email us at thecultfilmpodcast@gmail.com. And as always, if you'd like to get in contact with myself directly, you can find me on Instagram at 081331 Productions. And if you'd like to get in touch with Kenzie, you can get him on Instagram at
Doge_dogs on Instagram.
And if you're into Twitch and watch gaming streams and stuff like that, Kenzie has a Twitch channel, which is
twitch.tv/CrotoStickman.
Yeah, check that out if you're into streaming and all that jazz. And yeah, give us a like and a follow over on YouTube and Instagram and all that good stuff. And as always, I'll put all of that stuff in the description of the episode when it goes live. And yeah, this has been a bit of a weird one, but it's been fun as always, getting to talk about another movie which I really do like. So yeah, it's a goodbye from me.
And it is a farewell from me.
Podcast out.
Goodbye, everybody. Fuck, I think that's like our shortest one yet.